Get up. Step away from the desk. I'm not going into my office. Sir, I'm not moving until you tell my dining and into my private office without knocking. We received a tip. About what? About who? My name is on this building, or the next voice you hear in this room is going to be my attorney.
The camera mounted in the upper corner of that office had been recording for 11 seconds before Sheriff David George said his first word. 11 seconds of footage that nobody in that room knew would become the most consequential 11 seconds in the history of the Columbus County Sheriff's Department. The timestamp burned in amber in the corner of the frame. The overhead angle, installed 3 years earlier after a break-in, positioned specifically to cover the desk, captured everything with the flat, unblinking precision of a machine that does not care what rank the man in the room holds or how long he has held it. What it recorded was this: a black man in a tan blazer seated behind his own desk, hands folded on the leather pad in front of him, posture composed, expression the specific kind of still that comes not from passivity but from 19 years of knowing exactly which rooms require you to be the most controlled person in them. A white sheriff standing over that desk, one hand extended outward, the gesture of a man so accustomed to people moving when he points that the pointing has become automatic, reflexive, as unconscious as breathing. And a second deputy filling the doorway behind him, arms loose, weight settled, blocking the only exit. None of them knew the camera was already running. Evan Smith did. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. And if you believe that a man's business should be the one place in this world where his name on the deed means something, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to show you exactly what happens when a sheriff mistakes the owner of the room for a problem in it. And it does not end the way David George expected. Evan Smith was not a man who had arrived easily at that desk. He was born in 1983 on Columbus's east side, the second of two sons, in a neighborhood that had been systematically underinvested for so long that the absence of resources had become invisible, not noticed, just accepted, the way a missing floorboard becomes part of the house. His father drove a city bus for 27 years, the same route, same hours, the kind of work that does not ask for much except that you show up and that you are reliable, and his father was both. His mother kept the household accounts on a yellow legal pad at the kitchen table with a precision that Evan would later understand as a form of love, the careful, unglamorous work of making a family work on a budget that did not invite mistakes. It was his mother who first put him in the kitchen. Not formally, she was not teaching him a skill, she was just letting him watch, and watching became standing beside her, and standing beside her became understanding that food was not just sustenance but decision, intention, the daily choice to feed people well when you did not have to. He was 11. He did not have the language for it yet. But he understood it. He graduated from Lyndon McKinley High School in 2001. He enrolled at Ohio State on a partial academic scholarship and studied business administration while working weekend shifts at a downtown hotel kitchen, learning both sides of the industry simultaneously, the theory in the classroom, the practice at the prep station at 5 in the morning. He graduated in 2005 and spent the next 10 years in restaurant management across Columbus, moving through every room a restaurant contains, the line, the floor, the walk-in, the books, the conversations with vendors who needed to be paid, the conversations with staff who needed to be heard, the slow accumulation of knowledge that comes not from reading about an industry but from living inside it until its rhythms become your own. In 2010 he signed a lease on a vacant space on Meridian Street in his own neighborhood, not because the rent was cheap, though it was, but because he believed the East Side deserved a restaurant that took it seriously. He named it Smith's Table. The concept was precise: contemporary American food made from ingredients sourced within 100 miles, cooked by people who lived within 5, served in a room that felt like it respected the people who sat down in it. The restaurant opened with 8 tables and a 4-week reservation waitlist that surprised even Evan, who had believed in the idea but had not fully anticipated how hungry the neighborhood was for it. Within 18 months he had expanded the dining room, added a private event space, hired 13 full-time employees, all Columbus residents, 9 of them from the East Side specifically, and received a James Beard Award nomination that he had framed on the office wall between his business license and a photograph of his parents taken on opening night. By 2024, Smith's Table had been in continuous operation for 14 years. Evan owned the building outright. His name was on the deed, the signage, the tax filings, and the phone number on the reservation line that rang on his desk every evening at 6 o'clock. He had never missed payroll. He had never been cited for a health violation. He had mentored 4 of his current staff members from their first restaurant job to their current positions, paying for 2 of them to complete culinary certifications he had no obligation to fund. That Wednesday in October was a normal dinner service. The dining room was full by 7. The kitchen was running clean. Evan was at his desk in the back office reviewing the weekend vendor order and making notes on a legal pad in the precise, unhurried handwriting of a man who had spent 14 years making sure every detail of this business was accounted for. That is when his office door opened without a knock. Sheriff David George entered first. His deputy, Reyes, positioned himself in the doorway before the door had fully swung back. Neither man introduced himself. George looked at Evan behind the desk and told him to get up and step away. Evan set his pen down. He placed both hands flat on the desk surface, visible, open, in direct line with the camera in the corner that had been running for 11 seconds and would run for 10 minutes and 49 seconds more. And then, in the measured, unhurried voice of a man who understood that every word he said was now evidence, he asked the sheriff exactly what he thought he was doing in his office. Let's get into it. Evan Smith was not a man who had come easily to that desk. He was born in 1983 on Columbus's east side, the second of 2 sons, in a neighborhood that absorbed its own neglect the way old wood absorbs water, quietly, over time, until the damage is structural. His father drove the same city bus route for 27 years. Route 11, east to downtown and back, 6 days a week, with the particular reliability of a man who understood that his family's stability was built entirely on his showing up. His mother kept the household accounts on a yellow legal pad in the kitchen drawer, updated every Sunday evening after dinner, in handwriting so precise it looked typeset. She balanced that pad the way a surgeon handles an instrument, with the knowledge that error was not an option she had been given. It was in that kitchen that Evan first understood what food actually was. Not a recipe. Not a technique. A decision, the daily, repeated choice to make something good for people who needed it. His mother cooked the way she kept the accounts, nothing wasted, everything intentional, every meal an act of care that did not announce itself as care. He was 12 when he started standing beside her just to watch. By 14 he was making dinner twice a week. By 16 he understood, without having the language for it yet, that feeding people was the most honest form of hospitality he had ever encountered. It did not require performance. It required attention. He enrolled at Ohio State in 2001 on a partial academic scholarship and studied business administration while working weekend shifts at a hotel kitchen downtown, arriving before the prep cooks and leaving after the last ticket cleared. He was learning 2 things at once, how a business worked on paper, and how one worked at 11 p.m. when the exhaust fans were still running and the floor needed mopping and the last reservation had just sat down. Both educations were necessary. He graduated in 2005 and spent the next 10 years moving through restaurant management across Columbus, the prep kitchen, the floor, the books, the vendor calls, the 3 a.m. conversations with the dishwasher who had been there longer than anyone and knew where every body was buried. He learned every room a restaurant contains. He learned what breaks first under pressure and what holds. In 2010 he signed a lease on a vacant storefront on Meridian Street, 4 blocks from where he grew up. He named it Smith's Table. 8 tables, a short menu built around sourced ingredients, and Evan behind the pass every single service for the first 8 months. Within 6 months there was a reservation wait list on Fridays. Within 2 years, a James Beard nomination, framed on the office wall between his business license and a photograph of his parents taken on opening night, his mother in her good coat, his father with the expression of a man who has watched something he believed in become real. That photograph was on the wall on the Wednesday in October when the office door opened without a knock. George did not knock. He did not introduce himself. He came through the door with the forward momentum of a man who had decided what this room was before he entered it, and he looked at Evan behind the desk and told him to get up and step away. Evan set his pen down. The motion was unhurried, the pen placed parallel to the legal pad, the cap aligned, the way you set something down when you intend to come back to it. Then he placed both hands flat on the desk surface, palms down, fingers open, visible to the camera in the corner and to anyone else in the room who was paying attention to what a man's hands were doing. He did not push back from the chair. He did not stand. He looked at George and asked what this was about. George told him there had been a report. A tip placing a suspect at this location. He needed to see identification. Evan looked at him for a long moment. Not with anger, with the particular, evaluative attention of a man running a calculation he has been forced to run before and has learned to run without letting it show on his face. Then he asked George to look at the wall behind him. He said it the way you ask someone to read a sign they are standing directly in front of. Not a request, not a challenge, a direction, given in the even tone of someone who has already identified the shortest path to clarity and is offering it as a courtesy. On that wall, arranged in the order in which they had been acquired, a framed business license issued by the City of Columbus, current and unrevoked. The registered deed of property, his name typed in the grantee line. The James Beard nomination letter, dated 2012, addressed to him by name at this address. A photograph of his parents on opening night. A staff photograph from the restaurant's 10th anniversary, 13 people standing in front of the building whose name matched the name on every document in that frame. He told George his name was on the exterior signage visible from the street they had driven in on. On the tax filings for this property going back 14 consecutive years. On the reservation system running on the computer 18 inches to George's left, which had been logging bookings under his name since 6 o'clock that evening. He told him there was a camera in this room. Then he asked for the description on the tip. Specifically, the physical description of the suspect that had brought 2 uniformed sheriffs through his dining room, past his customers, past his staff, and into his private office on a Wednesday evening in the middle of his dinner service. George told him that was not his concern. Evan looked at him steadily. Then he said that it was, in fact, his only concern, because whatever description was on that tip, it had led here. To this desk. To this room. And he would very much like to understand how. Reyes shifted his weight in the doorway. George moved, not back, sideways, around the corner of the desk, closing the distance between himself and Evan without crossing into contact. The spatial message was clear. The room had just gotten smaller. He told Evan he was going to need to come with them while they sorted this out. Evan did not move. He said he was not going anywhere without a clear statement of the legal basis for that request. Not a raised voice. Not a demand. A sentence, delivered in the register of someone who has spent 14 years in rooms where imprecision costs money and has learned to require precision from everyone in them. George told him he could make this easy or he could make it difficult. Evan said he was making it neither. He said he was making it recorded. He let that sit for 1 second, then looked directly at the camera in the corner, not to perform, but to ensure George's eyes followed his, and they did, and the camera's position above the desk registered in George's expression in the specific way that information registers when it arrives too late to be useful. A knock at the office door. Reyes stepped aside without being asked, which said something about what he had read in the room. A woman leaned in. Mid-40s. Dark blazer. Dark hair. Reading glasses pushed up onto her head, the way you push them up when you've just been interrupted from something you were concentrating on and haven't decided yet whether to take them off entirely. She looked at Evan first. Then at George. Then at the camera in the corner, which she clocked in under 2 seconds with the unhurried attention of someone who has been in enough rooms to know where the camera is. Then she looked back at George. She told him her name was Patricia Osei. She said she was Evan Smith's business attorney and civil rights counsel. She said she had been at table 7 for the last 40 minutes and that she would like to know the legal basis for the detention of her client. George showed her the tip document. She took it. She read it in full, which took less time than George expected, and looked up. She asked him to read the physical description on the tip aloud. He read it. She asked him to look at the man seated behind the desk, 6 feet tall, 210 pounds, 41 years old, and explained to her how a tip describing a 5'8" Latino male in his mid-20s had resulted in 2 uniformed county sheriffs entering a private office in a privately owned building and demanding that its owner leave with them. The room held that question for 4 full seconds. No one filled them. Then Patricia Osei placed her card on the desk, face up, centered, directly in front of George, and told him that he and his deputy needed to leave her client's office. And that when they did, she would be requiring both badge numbers before either of them reached the front door. George gave the badge numbers without meeting Evan's eyes. Reyes gave his to Patricia, who wrote both down on the back of her legal pad in the same unhurried handwriting she used for everything else. Then Evan opened the office door and walked them out himself. He did not have to do this. The dining room had its own exit. He could have let them find their way back through the hall and out the front without him. He chose not to. He walked 1 step behind George through the corridor, into the dining room, past the host stand, past every occupied table, and the room understood what it was watching without anyone saying a word. A man walking 2 uniformed sheriffs out of his own restaurant on a Wednesday evening, upright, unhurried, in the tan blazer he had been wearing when they arrived, his name on the wall above the bar and on the sign above the door they were now moving toward. He held the door open. They walked through it. He watched them reach their vehicle. Then he let the door close. He went back to the pass, spoke to his floor manager for 90 seconds, keep the service clean, nothing happened that affects the kitchen, and returned to his office. Patricia Osei was already at the corner table with her legal pad open and her reading glasses on. He sat down across from her and they worked for 30 minutes without stopping. They documented everything in the order it would be needed, the timestamp from the office camera showing 11 seconds of footage before George's first word, the physical description on the tip against Evan's actual dimensions, the duration of the detention, 10 minutes and 40 seconds from entry to exit, the exact words spoken by both parties and the sequence they were spoken, the names and badge numbers in the order they were given. Patricia drafted the complaint structure in longhand and Evan read each section and confirmed it was accurate before she moved to the next. The formal complaint was filed the following morning. 3 simultaneous filings, County Sheriff's Department Internal Affairs, the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, and the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. The office footage was submitted with all 3. Patricia's cover letter to the DOJ was 4 paragraphs. The 4th paragraph contained the timestamp, the tip description, and Evan's physical measurements, arranged in a single column so the discrepancy required no interpretation. Local news ran the footage Thursday evening. By Friday afternoon it had been viewed 900,000 times. By Sunday evening, 3.6 million. The footage was 10 minutes and 40 seconds of a man seated behind his own desk being told he needed to prove he belonged there. Refusing. And being right. The timestamp burned in the corner of every second of it. The county commission called an emergency session. The sheriff's department opened an internal investigation. What the investigators found extended well beyond a Wednesday in October. In 31 of Sheriff David George's 47 business entry operations over 5 years, the first person detained for questioning had been a black male, regardless of what the reported suspect's description said. In none of those 31 cases had the pattern been flagged. In none of them had anyone looked at the number and asked what it meant. Nobody had ever made it cost anything. Until now. 14 months after the Wednesday in October, the county settled. The number was $4.6 million. It was the figure that would appear in the headlines, the one that would be cited in the news segments and the social media posts and the legal journals that covered the case in the months that followed. It was not the figure Patricia Osei had fought hardest for. What she had fought hardest for was 2 pages. 2 pages attached to the settlement agreement as Exhibit A, signed by the county, witnessed, notarized, and entered into the permanent public record of Franklin County, Ohio. A formal written finding, not an expression of regret, not a statement of sympathy, not the careful non-admission language that institutions deploy when they want the money to end the conversation without the record reflecting what actually happened. A finding that the entry into Smith's table on the evening in question was without legal basis. That the detention of Evan Smith was unconstitutional under the 4th and 14th Amendments. And that the decision to target Evan Smith specifically was consistent with a documented pattern of racially disparate enforcement conduct that the Sheriff's Department had failed to identify, review, or correct over a period of 5 years and 47 field operations. That finding was on the record. It could not be walked back. It could not be settled away or quietly revised or buried in a footnote. It was, Patricia Osei explained to Evan the morning the agreement was finalized, the difference between an institution paying to make a problem disappear and an institution being required to acknowledge, in its own language, in permanent public documentation, what the problem actually was. Sheriff David George resigned 6 weeks before the settlement was announced. The statement cited personal reasons. He did not hold another elected office. His name appears in the settlement documents and in the public record of the internal investigation and in the finding attached to Exhibit A, in the precise, institutional language of a document that does not require anyone's cooperation to be read. Deputy Reyes received a formal reprimand and completed mandatory civil rights retraining. He remains in an administrative capacity. The Sheriff's Department implemented new protocols requiring written physical description verification, independently confirmed by 2 officers, before any business entry on a tip. Within 8 months, 3 neighboring county departments had adopted the same protocol as standard procedure. Evan used a portion of the settlement to retire the remaining balance on the building's commercial note, converting it to full ownership. He established the Meridian Legal Resource Fund, 2 civil rights attorneys, office space on the east side, available at no cost to any black business owner in Columbus who experienced a civil rights violation and needed someone in their corner who had been there. He endowed a scholarship at Ohio State's business school in his mother's name for first-generation students from Columbus's east side pursuing degrees in hospitality and business administration. At the press conference on the sidewalk outside Smith's table, he stood in front of the sign that had carried his name since 2010 and spoke for 4 minutes. His 13 employees stood behind him. The block was full, not a crowd that had been organized or summoned, but the specific gathering of people who had heard something was happening at a place that mattered to them and had simply shown up, the way communities do when they recognize one of their own. He said, "This restaurant has my name on it. It has always had my name on it. And I am still here." Inside, behind the host stand, past the dining room, down the corridor, in the private office with the warm desk lamp and the legal pad and the framed photographs on the wall, the camera in the corner was still running. The timestamp moved the way it always had, amber numerals in the upper right, 1 second at a time, indifferent and precise. The desk had not changed. The documents on the wall had not changed. The name on the deed had not changed. Neither had the man who sat behind it every Wednesday. And every other night the dining room was full, which was most of them. If this story stayed with you, if you felt the weight of what Evan Smith carried in that office and what he built back from it, then this video needs to be seen. Hit the like button right now. Share it with every black business owner you know, because what happened in that office happens in back rooms and stockrooms and offices across this country to people who don't have a camera in the corner or an attorney at table 7. Drop a comment telling me what moment hit you hardest. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it now, because tomorrow's story is already waiting, and it is the kind that changes the way you see the room you're sitting in. Evan Smith did not win because he got lucky. He won because he was prepared, he was documented, and he did not give that camera a single second of footage that could be used against him. Remember that. See you in the next one.